Today I'm speaking with Jode Allen. He's a real estate agent with Century 21 here in Utah. In fact, where are you specifically?
Our office is specifically in Midvale, but we've also opened up one in Orem and open up one soon here in Centerville.
Good. Now, Jode's story is a great story. We're not going to talk about that, but you haven't always been a real estate agent. You've been in real estate, did some other things.
Was in real estate, mostly been in with software development for the last 10 years prior to the divorce.
But had done some real estate work in the past.
Yeah.
Why are you in real estate now?
Well, I wanted to control my own destiny, and that was the big thing.
Yeah, and so even though we're not going to talk about that, it's like, Jode wanted to have control over his work environment and not have to just be a slave to his divorce. His wife filed for divorce. Now, I can say that because Jode was my client. But the reason I have Jode here today is because he's a real estate agent, and as I said, that's nice. It gives you're essentially self-employed.
Yep.
You're part of a company. It's actually kind of a nice thing.
Yeah.
If you are somebody who said, having to work for an employer is so miserable now that I'm divorced, and those of you that are divorced know what I'm talking about in some cases. Real estate's not bad because you are working for a company, but you really are basically on commission. So you decide how much or how little you make, and you set your hours, and you can work as much or as little as you want. You have to do a certain amount, or they may not.
Yeah, I need to survive. I need to live, but yeah.
So that's a good thing. But what we're going to talk about today is when a divorce and real estate collide. There are a lot of things that people can do to spare themselves a lot of headache, a lot of heartache, a lot of confusion, and a lot of unnecessary work. So where would you like to start?
Probably maybe the first place to start would be obvious, because the home is often the largest asset in the marriage going into that, and that's one of the big linchpins of the whole divorce agreement and where you go. What do you do with the home? And as I've looked at it, in my case, we had a couple different options, but everyone's a little different. But there are really only a couple things to look at, and you're probably more familiar with them than anything. But
sure,
you either sell the home and divide the equity equally after the mortgage and everything,
or unequally, as the case,
or unequally may be, as in my case, whatever it takes to get the job done. Right. Or the other, one of the parties may buy the other out, as far as either trade other marital assets or whatever, or cash that they may have themselves that they can buy out the other person's portion of the equity as determined on that, or continue to co-own the home, which may happen in some cases depending on what's best.
Starting there. Now, for those of you that don't know what equity is, and don't be embarrassed if you didn't, I didn't know what equity was for a long time in my adult life either. I mean, I'm awash in it now, and so is Jode. But equity means the value of your house up against what you owe on the house. So if your house is worth $250,000 and you owe $200,000, the equity, the amount of value minus the loan, is $50,000. And so that's value that needs to be divided. It's a marital asset. Even though you can't hold on to it, that's what equity is. And so houses with equity in them are sometimes sold, and then the parties just simply divide up the cash once they get the money. You can also divide equity by saying, all right, well, so if you and I were married, and which could eventually happen even in the state of Utah, but figuratively speaking, it's like, all right, well, hey, our house has it's $250,000 in value, $50,000 in equity. After we've taken out the cost of sale or refinance, we're not really going to sell it because I'm going to buy you out. Sure. You don't particularly care about staying in the house, but I want to keep it.
You want to keep it. You want to keep the kids there, keep them a stable
whatever the
environment,
reasons might be.
Whatever.
And so what I can do is I can go to the bank and say, I want to be the only person on this loan. I want you to make a new loan to me, and so I will now be the sole person responsible. And when I refinance, at the time I close on that new loan, I'm going to cut a check to Jode for $25,000. Either way, we've divided the equity. Now, let's talk briefly then a little bit about this other option where, you know what, I can't afford to refinance the house. My credit was bad, and it's gotten worse because of the divorce. And so I still want to stay here because of I love the house or the neighborhood, or because of the kids and they love the house and the neighborhood. What can we do there?
Right. One of the options is to continue to co-own the home. I mean, that puts one or both of the parties still at risk. Depending on, well, let me back up a little bit and talk a little bit about, before we go into that, about the ownership of the home.
Sure.
And the mortgage. Those are two different things.
Excellent point.
You own the home based on title. Whoever's on the name is on the title. And typically, especially in Utah, you've got both parties' name is on the title. That's who owns the home.
It's our house, so
Right,
it's only
your
fitting
home.
that we both own it.
Right. And then you also have the mortgage. Whose names are on the mortgage? Who's responsible for that? Now, if we both own the house, we're both on title, and you want to keep the home, well, I can write what's called a quitclaim deed and take my name off the title, meaning I'm quitting my claim to my portion of the home.
Quit claim deed, not quick claim deed, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah. So I would write a quitclaim deed giving you the full ownership, full interest in the home. And often that'll happen, in the divorce decree, whether the parties mutually decide or the judge decides it, whatever happens, someone will be given rights to the home, or it'll be specified. Now, just because I write you a quitclaim deed and give you full ownership,
I have title.
you have title, we're still both on the mortgage. And I can't just go to the bank and say, hey, I don't own the home anymore, it's not mine, I want my name removed
I'm not
from the
responsible
mortgage.
for this mortgage
It's their
anymore.
job to pay the mortgage. If they don't pay it, that doesn't happen. The banks don't care. And they're not going to let someone else out of a mortgage when they have two people that they can go after should there be a default.
Two pockets to collect from instead of one.
Right. So that's an important thing to remember is I can quit claim it, but I can't get off the mortgage unless someone refinances or it's sold. That mortgage has to be paid off and put in someone else's name in order for me, if I'm not longer being.
Which is what a refinance does. Is that what happens is the bank now makes a new loan and pays off the old loan. It can be more complex than this, but they've paid off the old, and now I'm responsible.
Right.
I borrowed new money, and I borrowed extra money because I paid Jode $25,000 for his share of the equity. But now I'm on the hook, and only on the hook because it's a new loan to me, not to us.
Right. And so that's a couple of things that need to be handled in determining
You'd be surprised.
that ownership.
You'd be surprised the number of people who think, "Oh, I quit claimed the house to my ex, so I'm free and clear of that." And then they went to go buy a new house or a car.
And that's going to show up on your credit.
They say, "Well, I'm sorry, you're just too big a credit risk. You're spread too thin." It's like, "What do you mean? I don't own that house anymore." It's like, "Yeah, but you're still on the mortgage."
Right. And so that's one thing. And so that other option of maintaining co-ownership, that's where there's a potential for risk there. And again, it depends on the party situation and what their willingness to work together, because you are going to have to work together on that. And if your relationship isn't good enough for that, that's going to be something you're going to be aware of, because you maintain.
May I jump in a moment there? So sometimes that makes sense, because if it's an amicable divorce or amicable enough, somebody might say, "This really is a great neighborhood.
Right.
These schools are wonderful. And we've been here a long time. Our neighbors' kids are the same age, especially now that we're getting divorced. That relationship and those supports are going to be even more important. The last thing I want to do is just pick up and move out of a house into an apartment in a worse neighborhood, or even a good neighborhood but just different.
Right.
How are my kids going to make friends? Are they going to make friends? All that kind of stuff. In the schools, and that's going to be a big change. Are my kids going to resent me for it? Are they going to just, even if they don't resent me, are they just going to say, "Why can't we live in our old neighborhood?" So it can work sometimes where, and again, using our example, so I'm still in the house, but I couldn't refinance.
Right.
Why on earth, Jode, would you allow that to happen? Where I agree to pay the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living here. It's only fair that I pay the mortgage, and we've established that. So I'm paying it. And it's like, I can do it because the loan we had when we bought this house 10 years ago was so great that I can't qualify for a new loan now. The rates are higher.
Right.
So I can pay it. I can manage it. Just don't ask me to refinance. Jode, why on earth would you do that?
Again, especially in that case, if the rates are good, in my particular case, my ex-wife is in the process of trying to sell the home and whatever. I don't believe she'd be able to refinance it and get a good a house payment on it as she could alone. We're now trying to support, between the two of us, two different households. That's going to be a big financial burden in most cases. And so being able to maintain that stability, particularly for the kids, is often the big reason. Also to be able to, I guess, maintain good credit, keep things financially as stable for a time period long enough in order to then later be able to refinance once both of us have kind of gone our separate ways and have, maybe if you were the stay-at-home partner and work from home, you now have time to work, build your employment, build your career, whatever, until you have financial stability to be able to run it completely on your own.
Good point. So we might say, look, I'm going to stay on here, but you're going to stay on the loan. I'm going to stay in the house. But I get to stay here until our last child turns 18 and graduates from high school, at which point what happens then?
And then we sell it and divide the equity.
Wait a minute. Why should you get half of the equity that, our oldest child, our youngest child is 3. That means that I'll be paying this mortgage all by myself for 15 years. You shouldn't get half of the equity at that point.
And that's something you want to take into account in those negotiations. Who's paying that mortgage? If one party's paying the mortgage, then you want to keep track of that. Look at, here's the principal amount, the amount that I've paid towards principal over that time. Principal being the amount that you actually owe on the loan, because part of your payment is the principal, the other part is towards interest. And so that principal is what goes towards equity. So if one party's been paying that over that term, keep track of that and then subtract that from the other half of the equity. And again,
right.
It's not equal, but it's equitable.
Yeah, and Jode makes a good point here, is that what you can do is you can say, look, whatever the house is worth at the time we finally sell 15 years down the road, you could say, well, it's going to make it worth my while. The house will go up in value just by virtue of time passing, at least that's what we hope.
Generally.
You would get your share of that. Because you say, hey, that's one of the, you bargained for that, saying that. Yeah, I'm going to get my half of the equity minus the principal that I've been paying. That's only fair. But you're actually going to get more. Another way we could do it, we could say, we filmed this August of 2014. As of August 2014, the equity in the house is 50.
Right.
15 years from now, I'm going to give you $25,000. Half of 50 as of August 2014.
Right.
So that's fair. I mean,
Sure.
There's more than one way to skin that cat, but that way we know. We say, hey, look, we already know the value as of the date we got divorced, and that's the equity we're going to divide. Could it be with interest or without interest? Like, okay, 15 years, I could make some interest on $25,000. We can say yes, or I can just hand you a check for $25,000, or I can hand you a check for $32,000, saying, hey, here's 25 plus interest.
Right.
Because the house has accounted for that anyway.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind, you say hopefully the house is appreciated over time, and in general, land does. But as we've seen in recent years with the market, I just saw a property the other day that 4 years ago sold for $250,000. In 2011, when it sold, it was for $160,000, and it dropped nearly $100,000.
Divorce attorneys used to just, myself included, we just assumed houses will go up in value. Not anymore. And maybe we're going to be maybe we're working our way up where it'll actually just keep climbing, and another generation will have that happen, and we'll just forget all about it. But make sure that your divorce decree is structured so that it takes into account what's going on. Because if you're going to say, hey, $50,000 equity in 2014, I get $50,000 15 years in the future. Well, if there's a horrible economic collapse, if you think that's going to happen, you're probably going to want half of $50,000. If you think that the house is going to go up in value, you might say, fine, Eric, you keep what you've contributed in principal, but I get half of the value minus the principal later on, because you'll do better.
Right.
And if you're going to wait, it's only fair. But remember, there is risk involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one thing we talked about before we went on camera was some of the problems you've seen divorcing couples, yourself included, encounter that they can avoid right now simply by being told, hey, this could happen.
Right. I ran in one of the very first clients I had as a real estate agent was a divorcing couple, and I helped them sell their home as well as help both of them buy homes. and I've had several people, several clients and prospects contact me since then that are in similar situations. The biggest thing that I run into that people aren't aware of when they're divorcing is often one or both of them want to go buy a new home. They obviously realize we're splitting households. Well, I want to buy my own home.
Either because I'm leaving the house that my ex is keeping, or
Or
we're selling the
selling it.
existing house and I need to
Right.
get into something else, usually a smaller home.
Often,
a more
often
affordable
a smaller, something more affordable. In either case, regardless, the biggest roadblock people run into that they aren't aware of is the ability to get a loan for a home immediately prior to or in conjunction with a divorce. If you still own your previous home and you're trying to get a loan for a new home, obviously that home's going to show up on your credit report. If you do not have the personal income enough to offset owning essentially two homes, that's going to affect your ability to get a loan. So you want to, again, handle the current home that you have up front. Maybe that means, like in the case of my first clients, get the home sold as quickly as possible. If you both intend to leave it and just part ways, get it sold quickly so that can get off of your credit report, and you also now have the income from that home if you divided up the equity to put towards your next home.
Which is why this I stay in the home and we wait for 15 years is like Jode would have to be in a position to say, yeah, that may mean I'm renting for quite a while because I won't be able to, my credit report won't allow me to qualify.
Yeah, so if someone's going to stay in the home, and that if you want to buy a home but you don't have the ability to own two homes, to have two mortgages, you need to find a way to either get the other person to buy you out or refinance or whatever it is so that you have that freedom to do so. The other thing often that I've run into, and this is where you want to have a good mortgage lender. I don't, as an agent, don't necessarily help you with this. I can direct you to good mortgage lenders. You want to have a very good and experienced mortgage lender who has dealt with these types of situations, because often, even in a case like that, they might be able to find some ways and structure a mortgage in such a way or get you pre-approved in such a way that allows you to do this. But if you have not filed your paperwork yet, if you've not filed for the divorce, then they're not required to show things like child support and alimony. Now that may, depending on which side of the equation you're on, that may be a benefit.
Yeah, it may help or hurt, but
you.
what the point
You know,
is,
if I'm going to be the one that's going to be paying child support and alimony, and I filed paperwork and I'm in the divorce process, a lender is often not going to qualify me because they say, okay, you've got a divorce pending. We don't know when you come out after the decree whether how much you're going to owe in child support or whatever, so we can't take a risk because we don't know what your expenses will be. As if you're on the other side of the equation where you might be receiving the child support and alimony, they may be able to say, oh, well, you need to have at least 3 months of continuous child support and alimony payments so that we can include that as part of your income. So there are those variables you have to take in place. Oftentimes we'll advise a client, if you're going to buy a home and if you can both qualify now and you'll be able to qualify once the decree's over, go ahead and get the loan now and get purchasing the home before you file your paperwork so that you don't get all screwed up or bogged down.
Get a better rate and stuff like that because you look a lot wealthier. Now you're going to be a little poorer, but as long as you can still make your payment, the bank's not going to get upset with that.
But be honest with the bank too. If you can afford it now without having to pay child support and alimony, but once that hits, you can't afford it. Don't try and get the loan. You're just going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Exactly.
But that's one thing to do. Otherwise, wait until the decree's done. Then you can have all that set up and be able to move forward.
I'm getting divorced, and at least I've got $50,000 equity in the house because that money sure is going to come in handy.
Right. So
famous last words.
Famous last words.
Okay. Why?
With any home buyer.
Right.
As a homeowner, every homeowner thinks their home is of more value often than it is. You've put a lot of work into that home. It is of great value, and a lot of homes are. But you're biased. You put more value in that. The home is only going to sell what the market is willing to pay for.
Tell us a little bit about what determines market value. So we are walking down the street in our neighborhood and we just look at every other house on the block and say, you know what? No other house on the block is as nice as ours,
Oh,
Joe.
absolutely.
It's really a shame we're getting divorced, but we're going to clean up.
Exactly.
We finished our basement. None of our neighbors have.
Right.
We put a new roof on. None of our neighbors had. We have a built-in, in-ground jacuzzi. That's going to attract buyers like flies. And since we know that everybody else's roof is original roof, but ours is a new roof. Well, that was $10,000.
Right.
We finished the basement. That was
nice
$10,000.
landscaping. There's a huge fountain in the back. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. So you know what? With all that money, all the other houses are going for about
Yeah.
$250,000. We should be able to get $300,000
Right.
for ours.
And with the patio in the back alone that we spent $10,000 on, that should at least raise the value $10,000.
$10,000.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of gotchas in that.
mean, that's not
scenario.
true?
No, not necessarily.
It's not true?
It's not true.
Yes, it's not true.
You know-
Get over it right now. Accept it. You are not an exception. You never will be. You're in good company. The people before you that got divorced weren't, and the people that come after you are not. But it's time for some strong medicine. All right.
Right.
Tell us about how this works.
So market values things based on. Let me use a simple example of
Sure.
buying a car. You know, if you were to go to one dealership and that dealership had a car for $20,000, and you were go to another dealership and they had that same car for $20,000, but it had a really fancy navigation system in it, fancy rims, and all that, which would be a better value?
The one with extra stuff.
The one with the extra stuff for the same price. You know, more features for the same price. It's better. Well, what if I went back to the first dealership and they lowered the price on their car down to $15,000?
Well, I never wanted the fancy rims and all that other stuff anyway, so I'm now going to buy the $15,000.
Exactly. And for that extra $5,000 you saved, if you wanted, you could put your own stuff in
Yeah,
it.
my own stuff. I
And
don't
even more.
I want
probably.
fancy rims, just not the fancy rims that guy
Exactly.
was selling.
So what we can see is that the value is based on features and price. The more features for the same price, the better the value. Same features for a lower price, better value. So what typically happens with a home is most people aren't going to go in when it's time to sell a home and start adding more features, like another bedroom or a pool or something like that. They might do paint, carpet, things like that, or granite countertops. Those aren't necessarily features. They do give some perceived value and that, but really I can go buy a new home with all that stuff in it, often for the same price or less, depending
Right.
on how things are going.
And the fact that you washed the car before I came to your lot doesn't mean that I should be grateful.
Right.
It's like it rained. Of course you're going to wash
Right.
the cars.
It might bring better curb
Right.
appeal, better
Yeah,
attractiveness.
I'll
and
say,
attract
hey, that's a
more
nice looking
people.
car.
And it is important, but in the end, when it comes down to it, if you say, oh, we put new carpet in, well, what if the person walks in, the buyer walks in, and they say, oh, we like it's nice carpet, but we're going to put hardwood floor in when we come in, so we're going to tear that out anyway. What's the value of it then?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. So
You just wasted a bunch of money on carpet I don't want.
Exactly. And if your home is, overpriced $20,000 over your neighborhood, even though, it might be a little better home, or you might have some other features in it that the other doesn't have, but this home is priced lower, $25,000, which one are you going to buy?
Right.
You spend the extra $25,000 doing what you want to this home versus get a home that's overpriced and now you have to change
Yeah.
everything anyway.
Maybe an older couple or an affluent couple might say, yeah, we can afford to shop around until we find the house exactly the way we want it already.
Right.
Because we don't want to fuss with having to have it remodeled. But for younger couples,
Yeah.
they're gonna buy the cheapest house they can stand.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at it, when you're selling your home, you want to really step back and look at it as you looking for a home. Would you buy your home if there was another one similar to it down the road for $10,000 less?
No.
No.
Yeah. You have to be honest with yourself. No, I'd
Right.
save
You
the $10,000.
have to be honest, and you also want when you go to sell the home, you want to find an agent that's willing to be honest with you about that. There's a lot of agents around. In fact, there's 4,000 to 6,000 here in Utah, and only 3 to 4% of them actually work full time and consistently. The average,
Really?
yeah, the average,
That's interesting.
and this is something that was a surprise to me. The average realtor nationwide sells 2 to 3 homes a year.
Because there's so many.
Because they're
it's spread out.
Well,
among-
there's so many, but they don't work.
That's what I'm saying.
They don't know what they're doing, and that there's really a small percentage that actually sell a lot of homes. So you want to get somebody that's experienced, that sells a lot of homes, that really knows the market, knows how to handle the market. And because they're not going to take an overlisted home. If right now in Salt Lake County,
they're not going to mess around. They're going to say, look, I'm a businessman or a woman, and I know how to keep things moving, and it's not because they're going to sell you out. They just say, look, I know the market. I know what's going to happen. We don't want your house to stay on the market too long.
Exactly. And particularly in a divorce case, you probably want to get this resolved as quickly as possible. In Salt Lake County and Utah and Davis County, it takes a little bit longer, but it's about the same. Homes are selling in about 30 days or so if they're priced right. And you see a lot of homes that are on the market for 60, 90, 180 days longer because they overprice them. They're too high and think, oh, well, we want to leave room for negotiating, so let's price high. Well, a buyer out there is, if your home is overpriced, they're just going to walk past it. They're not even going to come look at it. So you want to get priced right in the range immediately and get it sold.
That's not to lose money on the deal. It's to get market value without wasting time and without goofing around.
And quite frequently, a lot of people are concerned, well, we don't want to give the home away. We don't want to lose money on it. Well, if it's priced right, and even if it's priced below market value, everyone's going to see that. They're going, oh, that's a good deal. And people are going to jump on it. You're going to have a bidding war, which will end up...
In fact, sometimes, I know that sometimes what it is, they say, we're going to actually price it a little below market value, because then it'll attract all kinds of interested buyers, knowing it's priced below.
Yeah.
And then they actually find themselves creeping up. It's like, well, you know what? I'm still paying less than market, a little bit less than market. All right, I still paid market, so I'm still a winner.
Yeah. And sometimes they're even, if it's a really nice home and like
ours
has been really good, people are willing to pay a little more to get it because it's really a nice home. So my job as an agent, if I'm doing my job right, is to help you identify right where the market is, get it priced right, get it sold for as much as you want.
Now, by the way,
sure,
you have an interest in getting it priced, selling as much as you can, because that's part of your commission.
Sure, that's part of my commission. Me personally, and this is something you'll notice as you interview agents, we call it commission breath. Those who are just trying to make as much money as they can or aren't concerned about your interests. They're just more about their check.
But
yes, I do have an interest in selling it for as much as I can as a seller, and so my job is not to set a high price on it. My job is to market the heck out of that home, get it exposed to as many people as possible, so that the more people we have looking at it, the more people are likely to see the value.
One of the takeaways that I'm getting right now is that I had not thought of before was that, it's like, hey, well, my brother's a real estate agent. Well, so are 6,000 other people. The point that I just realized was, just because someone might say, well, I'll do it without charging a commission, means I'll be the agent. I won't make any effort. I don't know where the people are that are going to be interested. I won't show it to anybody. I'll just be the one that brokers the deal.
Exactly.
Which is...
So you do not want an agent that's going to put a sign in your yard and maybe put it up on KSL or something and sit and wait back and do all the paperwork for you. That's not selling a home.
But I saved that commission, Jode.
Well, you saved that commission, but you probably got less for your home than it was worth.
And it took me...
And it took you 90 days
to sell my house.
And so those are things, and this goes to a point, a lot of people, especially Utah's a big do-it-yourself state for sell-by-owners. I totally understand. I'm a huge do-it-yourselfer. I sold a home, my first home for sell-by-owner back in 2007 when you could sell homes right and left.
And we need to stop here. This is not an infomercial for real estate agents.
No.
We are having a candid conversation here. So if any of you are thinking, it's like, oh, this is just so that people will call Jode and hire him. No.
I'd gladly give myself a shameless plug, but you want, there's a lot of agents like me out there that are good. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
I would not sell my home by myself as a for sale by owner using for sale by owner tactics. Now I can sell it myself using the market.
And before I interrupted, you made a good point. Back in 2007, you'd be a fool not to sell your house by owner if you knew you were in a hot market.
Right.
Why pay a commission? I don't need to. I can put this up for sale,
right.
Ask any price I want, someone's going to pay it, and if not, I'm still living here, so there's no risk. All right, but we're not in that market anymore.
Right, and even so, and here's a couple caveats, and again, I just throw these out as things you must consider if you're going to try and take that route. Even in a hot market like that, for sell by owner is not the best way to go.
Okay.
For a couple reasons. One is typically, and this is statistics from the National Association of Realtors, only 2% of homes that go for sale, or let me get that, restate that. 98% of the homes that originally started for sale by owner end up selling with an agent. Only
Okay.
2% actually end up selling themselves. The other statistic is for sale by owners tend to get 8 to 10% less for their home than those sold by an agent. And a couple of reasons for that is they don't know how to price their home. So a lot of the market, the people that are looking to buy for sale by owner homes, are other buyers who are unrepresented. So they don't know what they're, and often they're kind of shrewd. They will negotiate you out of that price. If they are represented by agents, often the agents will come in and say, because they're backed by the numbers, they can use that to negotiate you lower and say, oh, well, your home is only worth this based on these other homes. When the inspection comes around, say, oh, we got this and this and this problem. We want to take so much off of your home based on this. So 8 to 10%. The average commission for an agent is anywhere between 5 and 7%.
So
it makes sense to pay an agent, 6%. And earn 2% more and losing 8 to 10. So
and 98% of people make that decision.
And 98% of the people make that decision to go with an agent anyway, and that. So there's those pitfalls. The other is legal. Now in a divorce, you're already in the middle of a really nasty legal battle often, and even if it's amicable, it's very complex, and there's a lot of things there. 20% of homes that sell for, I believe this is correct, but there is a high percentage of homes that for sale by owner that end up in litigation because paperwork, certain legal paperwork that is required is not done properly. Even on homes deals that are transacted with agents, there's a lot of mistakes done. We have insurance to cover us when we make a legal mistake.
And so even if you're a seller, a home owner seller, you may not want to run afoul of something, you just didn't know.
Right, you just didn't know, but that's not gonna.
And you mentioned a good point. Use a real estate agent, and even if the real estate agent makes a mistake, they have insurance
right
to help cover that, so that you can be made whole. You do it, you screw up, and you're the seller.
Lead-based paint as an example. A lot of older homes had lead-based paint. There are certain disclosure requirements that must be done on a home that's older than 1978. If something's not done right, something's left off of one of these documents or whatever, it could be upwards of a $10,000 fine. And so you don't want that in the middle of your divorce as well. And so it makes a lot of sense to use a reputable and knowledgeable agent to get this done. The other thing, which I alluded to earlier, is marketing. You get the price you want, and you're likely to get a higher price when you market, when your exposure to the public is higher.
Sure.
If I'm trying to sell this pen to you for $2 and I'm just offering it to you, you're the only person that knows about it, how likely are you to buy this pen? How likely am I going to find a buyer for this pen for $2?
Right. If I say no, then you got to go with the next guy.
Okay. If I put this on eBay and I've exposed it to $10 million and
10 million people,
I'm seeing 10 million people, and I say it's for $2, I'm likely to find a buyer for $2. Even if I wouldn't say, if I say it has a ghost in
and
it, who knows,
eBay
I might get 10,000.
Yeah, and eBay was virtually free. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of expense with that.
Right.
So the commission that's being paid, again, you can pay a commission to somebody who does nothing.
Right.
So
and you'll have even discount brokers out there that say, oh, we'll pay a flat fee, we'll put it on the MLS for you. You think, oh, well, we've got it on the MLS, it's covered. Well, one or two sites, Trulia, KSL, the MLS, versus something like, I'm with Century 21, we have upwards of 600 to 800 websites worldwide that our homes end up on. So we increase the exposure. As an active agent, there's two types of agents, passive or active agents. I'm an active agent. I spend 2 to 3 hours a day on the phones calling people around, calling other buyers in the area, calling your neighbors, calling other things, knocking on doors, looking for buyers for these homes, versus sitting back and waiting for someone to call me.
Right.
So you want to, when you interview your agents, you want to look for people that are willing to do that kind of work for you and earn their commission.
Right. What if I want to, and we're getting to the end, but what if I want to switch agents. That's easy, right?
No. Well, going into it, again, this is part of choosing the right agent up front. Typically, a good agent will not list a home for a period of any less than 6 months. Just because, with the market, it takes sometimes that long to do it. Now, again, if we price it right, we're generally very confident we can get it sold in 30 days or less with that. But again, we never know what the market's going to do.
Well, now I have an idea. We need to pinch every penny in our divorce, you and me. So what we'll do is we'll hire a real estate agent. We'll have him market the house. And then when a couple of buyers come in, what we'll do is we'll fire the real estate agent.
Right.
And then we'll just make the deal behind his back and we'll
Exactly.
save ourselves
That's a
the
great
commission.
idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
All right, so.
Read your contract with
Okay.
your agent. There is the contracts are very specific, because this does happen all the time, or at least people would attempt to do it. There are clauses in there that if you do decide to fire your agent, and again, when you sign with an agent, you're not just signing with that particular person, but you're signing with their brokerage, with the broker of that. And so your contract is with that broker. You may not like your agent and like what they're doing. Go talk to the broker. They maybe can reassign a different agent that works for you better, and that from within the company.
Okay, that's good.
So that's one thing to do. So if you're having,
But hey, this agent was doing a great job.
oh,
We just
okay,
wanted
we
to
just
screw
wanna
him.
we just want to save some money.
Yeah, we just want to save some money, steal
Okay.
some money, really.
Right,
So
right.
why not, right?
Any agent that's worth their salt's going to have a strong contract in place saying, we're going to do it for this time. You may withdraw your home at any time from that.
Yes, and now
But-
I'm going to sell. Oh,
If you sell it within the period of the original contract, I still get paid for that. If
and
the
there- so there it
contract,
is.
yeah.
Now, by the way, shame on you if you were thinking of doing that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I don't care if you're going through a divorce and you're down on your luck and that sort of thing. If you're going to make a deal with anybody, you need to pay.
Right.
So, but see, and that's how that's done. So if you thought, yeah, we'll use this real estate agent and then just cut him off at the last second and make a deal with one of the people that came through on our
Right.
open house, not going to work.
Right, exactly. So, get in the habit. I mean, this is just a regular life principle. Get in the habit of treating people right. Spend the time. You're going to get out of life what you put into it. Spend the time and effort and the money to get good help, especially in a situation like this, and let that work for you and work to your benefit. It may be a cost. You may wish you could save some more. Maybe there are places you can, and a good agent might help you find ways to do that. But don't skimp. Don't cut corners.
And you'd be the first to say there are plenty of really mediocre real estate agents.
There's a
out
lot
there.
of really mediocre real estate agents out there, unfortunately.
Jode, thank you so much. And so before we go, would you please give your contact information if anyone would like to reach you?
Oh, absolutely. I work for Century 21 Everest Realty here in Midvale, Utah. My phone number is 385-312-0514. You can also email me or you can text me at that number, but you can email me at jode.allen@century21.com. That's jode.allen@century21.com.
Good. And we're going to put his name up here under this because it's Jode Allen,
Yeah.
not Jade Allen and not Job
Or Joe.
Joe. All right. Thank you so much.
You bet, absolutely.